Welcome to the Rent to Rent single family dwelling. So on this particular case study, we have Florence. She did a refurb, with one of our clients, and she managed to project manage the deal. The particular client made a lot of money in turning a 2-bed house into a 4-bed house. However, she specifically wanted not to do the HMO model. She didn't want to do an SA model. She strictly wanted to just do a single family dwelling. Again, Florence working with myself as a mentor. So I said, you know what, you can actually rent this property on a single family dwelling basis. And what did Florence end up doing? Florence ended up negotiating with the landlord to pay her £1,500 so she can be able to rent this property to a single family that would be looking to renting that property. Now, in this particular case study, so Florence gets a management agreement with the landlord to subletting the property out in whatever amount that she so pleases. So instead of the tenant going to the landlord, the property owner, the tenant comes to her. And then she guarantees the rent month in, month out to the landlord. And a few other measures that I also obviously encouraged Florence to do was to put in a rent guarantor insurance. So God forbid, if the tenant could not pay the rent guarantee insurance that she has with her company would obviously pay the landlord. And she also took on a commercial protection insurance policy on her business that will also protect the landlord on legal cost cover. The reason why this is a great strategy and also it can be a bit risky, if the tenant does lose a job, you might end up not making money because in this particular situation, they've lost their job. With the rent-to-rent HMO model, you have 6 people can't lose their job. With the SA model, you have people that can be stuck in a tenancy. You can kick them out. With the care home providers, again, it's secured. But when it comes to single let, you can easily get stuck by one husband and a wife losing their jobs and not being able to pay the rent, and you could be in a massive drama. But what I did was to encourage her to get rent guarantee insurance, commercial protection policy, so that she is protected between herself and her landlord, and as well as do the same for the single family that was renting the property. So in this case, Florence pays the landlord £1,500 and then rents the property to a family for £1,900. So meaning that without worrying about gas, water, electric, as I've mentioned in all the previous case studies, she's generating £400 profit from a property that she doesn't own, and she's managing the property, and she's the landlord to the tenant, and as well as generating profit by not turning the property into HMOs, care home, and all of this. Now, we also have another different case study, Jacob. So Jacob is someone who came to one of our 3 days training program. So after, listening to me speak for the entire 3 days, Jacob said, what if I don't want to do HMO? What if I don't want to do SA? What if I don't want to do care home? And I just maybe go and scale my property portfolio doing exactly what Florence did. I said, well, yes, you can. So he found a property on Facebook Marketplace, and the landlord was looking for 1,750. And guess what? The property value market is actually about 2,350. But the landlord couldn't charge 2,350 per month because the property needed a brand new kitchen, the property needed to be redecorated, the property needed brand new carpet, the property needed new bathrooms. Some part of the property, the ceilings were falling down. The landlord needed to invest at least a minimum of £35,000 to £40,000 in this property, but the landlord did not have the money. However, Jacob could learn how to leverage on other people's money, which I will be talking about in the OPM structure later, or rather the OPM strategy at some point on the other people's money training in the Wealth University. So Jacob learned to raise about £35,000 against the £40,000 that was required, and he invested into this particular property. He secured a 10 years contract with this particular landlord to control the property for the next 10 years with an option to extend it for another 10 years. Okay, so meaning that he will control this property for the next 20 years. So for £35,000, guys, for £35,000 he invested into this landlord's property, he stands to gain money for the next 20 years. A lot of this kind of contract don't come by that easily. However, he managed to do the work, spent £35,000 to £40,000 on the refurb, He raised £35,000, and then the remaining £5,000, I'm going to share with you how he got that. So he took on this property, spent the money, and then went to the market. He's paying the landlord £1,750 a month, and then he now was able to rent the property out for around about £2,400. So £2,400 he was able to get from rent in this particular property, and then pays the landlord month in, month out £1,750 after the work was done. Now, whilst the work was being done, he came to me and I showed him how to market the property in advance. So he marketed the property in advance to the tenant, which is a single family that needed to live there. And then what he managed to do was, again, this was something a bit of creativity. So he asked the tenant to pay 2 months in advance plus the deposit. So the tenant ended up paying 2 months in advance plus a deposit, and that 2 months in advance plus deposit gave him over £7,000 income. All right, so remember the rent is £2,400. So times 3 of that, he got over £7,000, which then forms the balance of the £5,000 from the £35,000 he raised to basically doing the work. So when the tenant then moved in, about 30 days later, he found another money and then protected their deposits, because you need to protect their deposit as a family dwelling. So he protected their deposits, and then he was able to secure this property. And this property now generates Jacob £650 month in, month out profit, and he doesn't have water bills to pay, doesn't have gas electric bills to pay, doesn't have cleaning money to pay, and he maintains and manages the property month in, month, and the landlord is happy and he's happy. So Jacob also then went to another property somewhere outside of London, and what he also did was he found the property on the market somewhere outside of London. The rent month in, month out was £750. And so what Jacob now did was that he also found a council that was willing to rent the property from him. So he pays the landlord £750 month in, month out, and he rented the property out to the council for £1,350. So which also allowed Jacob, again on single family dwelling, not SA, not care home, not HMO, allows Jacob to generate £600 month in, month out. However, the property was run down, and in this particular case, I think Jacob spent about £10,000 to doing the refurb. Another case study was another property where Jacob also found a property that was so run down, he needed to invest about another £7,000 on it. And this particular property, the landlord was head on, and the first year he wasn't making so much profit, but it was decent enough. He agreed £850 rent with the landlord, and he spent just a couple of thousands, like I said, just under £10,000 on it. Now this property went back on the market after it was completed to rent, and Jacob is renting the property out for £1,200 per calendar month, which means that Jacob is generating around about £225 profit. So this is exactly how Jacob is now generating over £1,400 net per calendar month from 3 properties that he currently has on a single family dwelling model. Now, time to time, there's so many creative ways to get into the rent-to-rent model, and I hope all these different case studies I've explained, giving you the HMO case study, care home case studies, and as well as the single family dwelling case study, and hope you have been able to expand your mind to see the opportunities that there are in. Okay, so each one applies to which one you feel you're most comfortable with. Now, you would definitely have to do the work. We're going to go into covering all these different angles of rent to rent in the course of this training. I'll see you as we go into in-depth in the next training. See you soon. Take care.